where you are online. We're on country Weir land. I just reflect for a moment that there's a lot of emotion in traditional owner communities today, with the bill going to the Victorian Parliament, but at the same time tinged with sadness about the things that happened around the country yesterday. And so there's a lot of emotion rolling around. I just want to acknowledge that. The benefits of e-bikes are many. That's what we're here to talk about tonight, from emissions reductions to social inclusion to traffic congestion and air quality and a whole bunch of other things. And I think it beggars belief that anyone would spend any of their time thinking about how to limit the use of e-bikes rather than how to promote it. Nevertheless, tonight we've got the best possible panel to discuss e-bikes from a range of perspectives. And we've got some fantastic speakers, we did invite the Minister, Gabrielle Williams, who's the Minister for Public Affairs and Active Transport, who's not able to attend, but we will be meeting with the Minister and briefing her on this session. Also, as well as acknowledging Charlie, I want to acknowledge our members and especially the bicycle user groups. We can't achieve everything that we need to achieve without the fantastic bicycle user groups. If you are a rider who is a member of Bicycle Network, we really encourage you to join your local bicycle user group as well. They make such a difference, and I think we're very fortunate to be able to work in partnership with them. We're going to start with a bit of context setting today. We're going to hear from our very own Head of Public Affairs, Garry Brennan. We're going to hear from Peter Bourke, who's online. He's the General Manager of Bicycle Industries of Australia. He's based in Bendigo. Hi, Peter. And Glenn Weir, who's Assistant Commissioner from Victoria Police. Glenn, thank you for coming. You've had a hard week. Our heart goes out to you and to all your colleagues as well. Now, there's a number of people in the audience tonight who we will be calling on, including Alison Hetherington, who is our leader in Tasmania, Dr. Elliot Fishman, who's the Director of the Institute for Sensible Transport, Emmy from Dutch Cargo Bikes, Hemma, who's a gig economy worker, and Peter McLean, he's the CEO of Bicycle New South Wales. And I'm so happy that we're collaborating so well with a whole bunch of organisations around the country. So thank you so much for joining us, Peter. But I'll hand over now to our wonderful CEO, Alison McCormack. Ali.
Fantastic.
Hooray.
Well, thank you. Round of applause goes to all of you for coming. So thank you so much. And we've got so much to cover in an hour. We've had a huge response to this. 500 questions came in. It's just so important and shows how important it is to the community as well. So thanks to everybody for engaging and participating in this process. So let's get into it. Garry Brennan, you're first up. How do you see the future of e-bike transport?
Well, 15 years ago, Bicycle Network realised that the e-bike would be transformational. It would radically expand bike riding and bring tremendous economic, health and lifestyle benefits to Australia. Simply, more people can make use of bike transport from the outer suburbs where distances are longer or where there is hilly the roads are steep, or where you can take children to childcare without using a car when you're older but still want to ride for recreation or visit the grandchildren, or just simply to ride, socialise with friends, explore nature, or you might be a business that wants to move items around their interested in. E-bikes are changing how we live. But as with any change, benefits come with risks and challenges. For the changes to happen, there has to be sound, appropriate regulation that will enable a new industry and consumer segment to develop. Regulation gives industry certainty. Companies can invest in R&D, develop quality products, commit stock to a retail network that has trained mechanics, spare parts and accessories. and a whole bunch of new customers to come through the doors. The consumer needs access to trusted brands, reliable products that are safe, easy and convenient to use, to service, to support, and that will hold their value into the second-hand market. The authorities that manage consumer law to protect consumers need clear guidelines for products that are built to establish nationally agreed standards that ensure that the products are safe for users and for the general public. The road authorities that look after vehicle standards and the police who enforce road law should have to face nothing more threatening than a few more bicycles on the road. Electrically assisted, yes, but pretty much like any other bike. And those engineers that set the standards for bike lane and path design, such as stopping distance requirements and sightline setbacks, they should be assured that the bikes they design for, whether they be pedal or electrical assisted, will be fit for the infrastructure that we're building. In 2012, Australia started with good intentions, with good regulation, the adoption of our regulations based on the European pedelec standards. But now that is gone. And what we have is a mess that has put the bike dream at risk. But we can turn that around, so let's hear more about how we can do that and get back on track.
All right, thanks, Garry, for that good introduction.
Alison, we've just had a request to increase the sound.
Wonderful. So if everyone can speak quite loudly to come up and speak, that'd be wonderful. But online we have Peter Bourke from Bicycle Industry Australia and also representing Weir Australia. Welcome, Peter. So I think the first thing we should really cover is, Peter, could you tell us like what actually is an e-bike and what an e-bike is not? Oh, Peter, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, my apologies. A moment ago I wasn't allowed to talk, but thank you very much, Till, for letting me into the conversation. And thank you very much for the invitation tonight. It's there's been a lot going on, and so it's great to be part of this conversation. As Alison pointed out, well, actually, probably I should say, following on from Garry is probably more important. In 2012, we introduced EN 15194, and that started the process of standardising what an e-bike was. But in 2021, we decided that we knew better and we started to change the rules. But Victoria has now defined its own, what it is an e-bike in Victoria, and that is a 250-watt continuous rated power motor, maximum assisted speed of 25 kilometres an hour, maximum throttle assist up to 6 kilometres an hour. Anything above that is considered an unroadworthy motorbike or an unroadworthy moped. It is not considered an e-bike. We do have a secondary definition in Victoria, which is the continuous rated power of 200 watts. That is a legacy definition we've had since pre-2012, but the main one that we really use is the EPAC, the 250 watts. I do have to mention though that we were harmonised across Australia in 2021. Unfortunately, since then, we now have a different definition of an e-bike in Queensland, to New South Wales, to Victoria, to the federal definition. So we really need to go back to getting a single definition, and that would be an ideal scenario for Victoria. But I'm sure I'll talk about that later. Thanks, Alison.
So thanks, Peter. So let's go into what is an ideal definition just quickly across Australia for you. What are the three things that will categorise an e-bike?
It's quite simple for us. The legacy definition doesn't need to exist anymore. There's very few, if any, actual compliant bikes sold to the legacy PAPC definition of the 200 watts. But we really need to just stick to the 250 watts, the 25 k's an hour, the 6 kilometres an hour. But then, just to confuse things, we also now need to look at a load carrying specific category for e-cargo bikes. And weight, but they're different bikes to what most people use day to day. So from an industry's perspective, we certainly support following the European model, which is as I say, 25k an hour, 250, 6k an hour, and a separate categorisation for load carrying cargo bikes or for last mile freight.
Wonderful. Thank you for that explanation. I think we're all clear here in the room and online, which is wonderful. But I guess there's been a lot of conversation in the media, particularly about, do we call them e-bikes or do we call them unroadworthy motorcycles? And I guess, Glenn, this is where we're going to hand it over to you. You know, in terms of more the category that aren't classified as e-bikes, you know, what are the safety concerns police have regarding these unroadworthy motorcycles we're seeing?
Yeah, so first, thanks for the opportunity. Really, because it's an issue for us. So just listen to Penny describe that and all the confusion and where we've got to. Imagine how our front lines feel who don't deal with this every day, and then they're confronted with something. They go, well, what is it? Is it a dog, cat, fox, an e-bike? What is it? So it's a difficult piece. So you know, the standardised definition, I think, is absolutely right. So what we're seeing, it's the behaviour most of the time, not the device. And so this is just something that manifests across all the road trauma space, be it a motor vehicle, motorcycle, pedestrians, push bikes, e-bikes, e-scooters. It's the behaviour of the people, and we're seeing it in the trauma. So we're seeing it play out, and it is generally that non-compliance, either through design, and so it can't be compliant, or through behaviour, post-market, post-purchase modifications aftermarket, which then take it into the realm of just a motorcycle. So if all those things are made out and the bike is no longer an e-bike, it is an unregistered motorcycle, it falls into the space of it's a motorcycle. So you've got to wear a helmet, you've got to have a licence, you're subject to a whole range of things. But of course, it can't be a motorcycle and can't be registered because it doesn't meet requirements for that. So that's the issue that we're seeing. And we're seeing the trauma and the behaviour play again driven by humans, not so much by themselves.
Thank you for that. So in terms of like addressing this, because this is really what we want to look at tonight, I just want to throw it back to Peter Bourke to kind of just explain the framework, the legislative framework at the federal, the state levels, and how we can address this. So Peter, you know, could you simplify to us, you know, what we should be doing at the federal level to remove the use of illegal e-bikes in Australia, also the state level?
And I'd certainly like to echo what I've just heard from the police. It is a challenge for them because they are at the coalface, but they do have to actually implement the failures of governments above them. And Glenn, I can certainly say that because I don't work for the police or I'm not political, so I can say it's certainly failings of government have made your job much harder. So from our perspective, prior to 2021, every e-bike coming into the country was required to meet international standard EN 15194, the European standard. And there was also a mandatory requirement to get an advisory notice or an import permit to bring it into the country. Regulations at a federal level changed in 2021 to change that. And so that opened up the door to poor quality, overpowered, poor quality batteries, overspeed products coming into the country, sort of opened the door. So we're certainly working from an industry to re-establish the requirement for any product coming into the country to meet a required minimum standard, a minimum quality standard for both the bike and the electrical system. So that's around the Road Vehicle Standards Act, changing the definition of an e-bike within the Australian design rules, and then also working down to through the National Transport Commission so that we actually get a consistent national road regulation so we come back to what we're talking about, which is a consistent definition of what an e-bike. Because unfortunately, since 2021, when the federal government intervened, and I use that word, well, it's the wrong word, but intervened, we've actually been a bit of a dog's breakfast across the country. But also, what I'll just add to that is, with the lack of federal leadership, and including through the Australian Consumer Law, which controls the sales, we've then had the states doing their own thing. And whether that's the Office of Fair Trading in New South Wales has brought in new sales regulations as of the 1st of August. Victoria last week released their consultation paper on how the regulations they're going to have for the sale of e-bikes. We've had parliamentary inquiries in New South Wales, Queensland, and WA. So that lack of leadership has meant that we've had a fragmented approach to the three levels of parts of the process: the importation, the sale, and the road regulations. And that's where we need the federal leadership to actually deliver a harmonised approach.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, there's a framework, but what we're hearing from our members is this is real. So we'd like to invite some of the people who have fed back to speak now. I believe we might have Rebecca online. Rebecca, are you with us? No, maybe we don't have Rebecca. I'll come back to her maybe, but we do have Glenn Eckhart in the audience. Welcome, Glenn. Glenn's from the Whittlesea Bug, and he represents his bicycle user group, but also attends a forum at Bicycle Network representing around 20 bicycle user groups. And, you know, we'd just like to understand how your group uses an e-bike in a day-to-day.
Thanks, Ellie, and hi, everyone. I want to make this really tangible. As Ellie said, we kind of represent, hopefully what I'm saying is going to represent those 20 bicycle user groups within Victoria. And with the Whittlesea Bicycle User Group, as an example, and I'm just touching on one of the things that James mentioned, that's the social inclusion, which is actually really important. If what we're seeing is that people who are able to use an e-bike are able to join our rides where they otherwise might not. So if there was a ban to be placed that prevented them from using an e-bike on a public transport, that would have a major impact on our ability to run the rides, and also to ensure that these people who are dependent upon an e-bike are able to participate and feel like they are included. I think this is particularly important after, you know, we've all been through COVID, and the following years we saw that with Whittlesea Bicycle Users Group, it was actually really difficult to get people to come back and feel confident in actually participating in social events and social activities. And the e-bike has played a really significant part in bringing people into joining a group on their rides, because they do feel confident. They can, you know, some of the factors that do impact on people being able to ride a bike is their fitness and their perception that they can't keep up, or they can't ride long distances, or they can't go up hills. Age, believe it or not, all of us are impacted by that. And, you know, we've got quite a number of people who are a little bit older, and this enables them to continue to ride. We've had people who've actually said, look, I can't keep up anymore. I'll get an e-bike. And we have people in their 60s, 70s, 80s who are riding with us and happy, confident, and they feel really part of it. And health issues. We've had a member of our group who had some issues with their knee. They would have had to have stopped riding. They bought an e-bike and they're able to actually participate happily in the rides that we do. Also wanted to touch on, I hope this isn't being controversial, but one of the aims of Whittlesea Bicycle Users Group is to increase the female participation rates in our bike riding. And we've found that the e-bikes are playing a really significant role in getting an increase in participation rates of women joining our rides and feeling confident that they can be part of our group as well. So that's been a real benefit for us. So I'll just touch on, just give you some real life examples. So we had a ride the other day to Belgrave, beautiful part of Victoria, but it's long and there's elevation. And we actually had a number of people who joined that ride. So we are up in Whittlesea, which is out in northern areas of Melbourne. We rode from Mernda, South Marine, all the way down to Belgrave, which is about 72 kilometres and a fair bit of elevation. So as part of that ride, we had people riding to the destination, had a nice lunch and coffee and all the rest of it, and then brought the train back from Ferntree Gully. Now, if we were to ban e-bikes on public transport, those sort of rides just would not happen for these people. And, you know, a number of our rides, we do a number of rides to inner city Melbourne, where people catch the train back from Rushall Station on the Mernda line. yeah, that would actually prevent people from participating in our rides. So the impacts are very real. It's not, people making up stories and trying to be melodramatic. These are having real life impacts on our ability to continue to run the life we want and to continue to have the participation that we've currently been able to get. And I'm really concerned. And I guess the notion of having a blanket ban, the concern for me is that you're actually punished, like everyone who rides in our road actually has an illegal e-bike. You're actually, or potentially, if this comes into force, this legislation, it's going to impact on people who, and punish, for want of a better word, people who are trying to do the right thing and have a legal e-bike, and they're getting caught up in the net to try and improve safety. And that, people in my group, and I'm sure in other user groups, are scratching their heads thinking, well, that's not really fair. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your insights, Glenn. And I know that many people online associate with that as well. So thank you for speaking on that. And I believe that Rebecca's on the line. Rebecca?
Yes,
tell
hi,
us
can you
about
hear me?
how you use an e-bike.
Yes, hi everyone. My name's Rebecca. So I would describe myself as a very responsible e-bike user. I'm a GP. I cycle 16 kilometres to work and back each day, 5 days a week. And I am on an e-bike because it's actually uphill coming home. Getting to work is absolutely fine on a normal bike, a non-e-bike, but coming home is pretty tough, particularly when I have to get back for school pickup. I've got school-aged kids, and sometimes I'm bringing back things that I couldn't carry on a normal bike and cycle uphill. I have a very high quality bike. For those that know e-bikes, mine's a Turn Quick Haul. I rent my bike through Lug and Carry, a very, very good organisation. Regular maintenance and I would say a very safe e-bike. And I have to say I'm not a fast e-bike rider. I'm always overtaken by many non-e-bikes. I'm an all-weather cyclist. I really don't mind. I've got all the gear. Will travel in, ride my bike in any weather. But I'm also very safety conscious. So I really do rely on the public transport. So being able to put my bike on the train if there's a severe weather warning, if there's lightning, gale force winds, or if I get a call from school that my child is sick, injured, etc., and I have to get back quickly. I do need a way to get home. Or if I'm just feeling, I start cycling and realise I'm actually feeling quite unwell and don't think it's safe for me to continue the cycle home, I will go to the nearest train station and take my bike on the train. I think that if I couldn't legally bring my bike on public transport, just even as a backup option, it's black and white for me. I would not be able to continue to cycle to work, and that would be absolutely devastating for me and for many people in this situation. I get huge physical and mental health benefits from cycling to and from work, and really feel proud of the positive impact on the environment. In fact, as a GP, I encourage many of my patients to consider e-bikes. It's a great way to get people moving. Particularly people who may otherwise be unlikely to cycle due to injury, illness, fitness. And I think we should be doing everything we can to encourage good quality e-bike use in Victoria. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, Rebecca. It is an issue. And Garry, I think the train ban proposal has come through loud and clear. And the coroner's recommendations recently seem to have brought this to an end.
The big drama really has been the proposed ban. That surprised many people and brought the issue to boiling point. With huge response from the e-bike travel public. I think there's an undeniable element of unfairness about the ban proposition. Many people here with us tonight, and we heard online, have done exactly what you would expect of a responsible citizen. They have undertaken their research, sought out quality products from reputable established brands, right dealers, they've managed their batteries and charging carefully, and they've confidently taken their bikes onto trains without risk. Now they're potentially getting slammed. We also have the coroner's reports pointing out the obvious that many bikes are actually electrically powered motorbikes, and they're unregistered and the riders are not licensed. And we've also seen in Victoria and elsewhere very active policing recently, focused on bike delivery riders, as well as the overpowered e-bikes and scooters that are now quite common. All of this actually has been useful if you want to create a climate for change. Public consultation phase on the train ban has consequently generated a large number of submissions, not just well-written rational arguments, but strong personal stories of disadvantage. We currently have everyone's attention, which is right where you want it.
Thanks, Garry. So, I'm Weir. You're in charge of policing this. How do you? just yeah. No, just not you on your own. But like, how do you distinguish between like a compliant e-bike and an unregistered motorcycle?
Yeah, so it's the biggest challenge that we have, and again, I'll go back to what I said before, mainly around the behaviour. I mean, we're not anti delivery, right? Well, we think e-bikes are fantastic for all reasons that have been articulated. But we are concerned about road trauma because we have seen a significant uptick and we have flooded with complaints, particularly around the CBD in the suburbia where people are, threatened nearly hold out on footpaths. They have footpaths in the CBD going down the wrong way streets, going through the Burnham Tunnel. So these things are inherently dangerous. So the behaviours are inherently dangerous. So for us, it's in terms of the extreme, we monitor by speed and the settings for speed are quite clear. Figuring out the wattage is a problem. And I was in Rotterdam 3 weeks ago in conference. I was out for a walk early one morning after the conference and I saw all these police and what they're doing. And so Rotterdam, for those of you that know it, rebuilt specifically purpose to separate out trams, vehicles, bikes, pedestrians, fantastic. But all setting up, and they had all this kit because they know that's where, because they obviously had a problem similar, and looking at some of the, so I just stopped and watched for a moment. It was quite fascinating. The coroner's recommendations that have been mentioned talked about us, purchasing dynamometers, some people. I mean, I get that, and we'll work through that when we receive the form. But that's quite problematic for us for a whole range of reasons. Our people who are involved in the day-to-day, the high patrol people, particularly around the city suburbs, they know, they can check what is good behaviour. They'll detect offences either through speed or the settings around, throttle with an e-pack or not, so they know what they're looking for. But it is really problematic because often the first time we detect them, we are detecting the behaviour by virtual speed. Going too fast, going through a red light, going footpath, which is just, as I said at the start, around human behaviour. We're fully supportive. We see the great value and the great utility in e-ridables as a way to connect for all the reasons that we talked about at the start. But we will never back away from enforcement to keep people safe. Because at the end of the day, my job is to keep people safe on Victorian roads. It doesn't matter what type of road user they are. We will try and keep people safe.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know in the Netherlands too, I think they confiscated 10,000 illegal e-bikes in a year last year, which is absolutely huge with those dynamometers. Which is a difficult one, but it's really interesting, and we'll share around some images of those as well. They're like a big treadmill, but certainly.
That's exactly what I saw, but the actual capacity for us to do that and purchase, supply, train and use those in the current service demand issues that we have would be, really problematic.
And it's definitely been a big investment on their behalf as well, and it took a while to come up. But and tell us about the other issue, really, the risks around, the lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah, so I'll give the commentary around the proposed ban, which we've sent with but FRV are the agency who would be best placed to comment on that. We saw the footage of the fire on the train.
Yeah.
That looked issued. FRV, and I know that you will have spoken to them, I suspect, but if not, they will give you the data on how many lithium battery fires they're seeing each day, particularly in apartment buildings, places where people have e-scooters, e-bikes. So it is an issue, a live issue. Whether or not it's a matter for government whether they move to this ban on public transport or not. We probably don't have a view one way or the other because we're not the agency responsible for fires, but naturally we will be the agency responsible for enforcing that should that come into play. No doubt I hope it will be carefully considered around the risk versus the reward. And that's all we can ask for, but I certainly understand the sides of the issue. We go over a number of fires all the time caused by various things, but there has been, without speaking for FRV, who'll give you the specific data, but anecdotally there has been a huge uptick in fires caused by.
So let's try and ask Peter Bourke this question. Peter Bourke, hopefully is still there online. So this is a question about the type of battery. The bicycle industry members claim here that there have been no battery fires from compliant products, so like a Bosch or a Shimano type battery. So where is the issue coming from for these battery fires?
Thanks, Alison. And just to comment on what you've said about the industry, there's certainly been no registered or recognised fire from a quality battery meeting the standard 50604 in normal operation. I do have to say that because if you leave any battery underwater for 3 days, it will catch fire at some point. So, but in normal operation, it's okay. We found that out in the Brisbane floods. But you're 100% correct. The fires that we're seeing, they are certainly from poor quality batteries. They're certainly, e-bikes are from aftermarket kits and non-compliant and batteries that are heavily damaged from being poorly used. We know that. New South Wales is one of the only fire authorities that actually published their data, or fire data. They even published the brand of product that actually catches fire. And if you look at those fire, the #1 brand catching fire in New South Wales is a brand called Winx. And if you go to their site, it takes you directly to Alibaba. The next two are aftermarket kits, and the next two after that have a top speed of 80 k's an hour. So none of them is what we would consider an e-bike. Though we would consider all of those unroadworthy, non-compliant motorbikes, however we want to phrase it. So the regulations, the problem we have is that people like the police or anyone else on the ground are dealing with what we're letting into the country. I harped on that earlier, but the fires are the result of poor quality product, probably not even e-bikes, but the average police or rail operator, as we're talking about the rails, don't actually understand, or I shouldn't pick on them all, but many of them do not understand the difference between an aftermarket kit, what is compliant, what is non-compliant. And so they are all getting lumped under one umbrella. But I met last week with the rail unions and the rail operators. Again, they can't, they're just lumping it all under one umbrella, even though we know what the problem is. The problem is the low quality, the aftermarket, the unregulated product. But of course, the people on the ground policing it, it's a challenge for them to be able to pick the difference between the two.
Okay, thanks. And Glenn, I was happy to see you nodding there because I was going to ask you, is this kind of, is this?
I've got no doubt that that's right. And you know, I'm not sure where the push is coming from or what was the genesis of the proposed ledge change. It didn't come from us, but we've been asked to comment on it, which is what has been happening. But certainly, I think, you know, the regulation or what we're dealing with, what's coming into the country and what is being fitted aftermarket, as Peter said, that's exactly what we're seeing. That has caused, you know, we had a fatality about 3 months ago on the Mornington Peninsula that was caused by a really dodgy aftermarket fitting that, you know, that guys hit a pedestrian doing about 65 about this time of night. It's just terrible. So of course, as Peter said, that gets lumped into, oh, it's an e-bike. But in fact, it's human behaviour, as I kept coming back to. It's just the vehicle they use. So I think the more knowledge we can have, and I mean, it's, you know, I've learned some things tonight already. So you go take it back, and the more we can do together to understand the issue and then address it to weed out the chaff and just focus on the hard end.
That's great. And we are in it together. So really the key is, how do we stop these batteries coming in, the illegal bikes coming in? Peter Bourke, just really quickly, how do we solve this, you know, in terms of federal and state legislation? And we're all in it together. So can you just give us a quick 1 minute brief on that?
Thanks, Alison. And you're right, harmonisation, working together is what we need to do. A lot of you would have seen the letter that was led by Weir, Australia and BIA, co-signed by all the state bodies, that was circulated and sent to Minister Lee and Minister King, looking at Australian consumer law and importation law. I was in Canberra today supporting the member for Mackellar, Sophie Scomp's private members bill, looking at the definition of an e-bike and the requirement to meet a minimum safety standard to bring the product into the country. I'm working with the National Transport Commission to look at a national road regulation. So at least, again, we'll have a consistency in the regulations that we have in the definition and how they are actually applied on the road. I was lucky enough last Friday in my position as chair of the Australian Standards Committee on e-bikes to sign off on a new standard for e-bikes in Australia. Now that has to go through a bureaucratic process, which takes about 6 months. And we're also looking at internationally harmonising standards across the world. But the moral of the story is we need to be consistent in our messages. Bicycle Network with Peter McLean, who's on this call with Bicycle New South Wales and all the other state bodies, are definitely working together to achieve this. So we need consistent definition, import, sale, use. That's as simple as it gets.
Great. Thank you so much for your contribution, Peter. And we've got a few people around the country on the line, as Peter mentioned. I'm just going to throw to Alison Hetherington, Bicycle Network in Tasmania. Alison, are you on the line, and what's happening in Tasmania?
Thanks, Sally. I just wanted to give a quick update about Tasmania, because the state government late last year did go out to consultation for some regulatory options for e-bike regulations. And that was born out of frustration from some e-bike riders in Tasmania, because we have very steep hills in a lot of our settlements. And, you know, hauling a rider plus a few kids plus groceries and work equipment up some of those steep hills can be difficult. And we also had a snap election in Tasmania this year. So while that consultation went on, the government has considered the feedback from people, but we've had a 2-month hiatus on just decision making because of that government not being there. We have a new transport minister who'll have to be briefed on all of this, so we won't see a decision soon. And we have put in a request to talk to the minister in light of everything that's been happening in other states. We had initially not supported an increased speed, but had said we were open to a trial of a slightly higher wattage on the motor. But as Peter said earlier tonight, if we had an actual standard for that cargo or carrying load capacity bicycle, that would solve the problem that we're seeing in Tasmania.
Thank you, Alison, and for the work you do in Tassie too. Well, as Peter mentioned, we've got Peter McLean from Bicycle New South Wales on the line. So a ban on public transport is being proposed in both states, Victoria and New South Wales. What are you seeing, Peter, in New South Wales? Why is a ban being put on the table?
Thanks, Alison, and hello everyone. Sorry about my my camera not working, but very much agree with what has already been said by in-house and those online. We certainly in New South Wales, we have the strong feeling that this, and we've got strong evidence to suggest this, that it has been a union-led initiative, and that's been the feedback from a number of different stakeholders. We understand that to be the case, and that is, I guess, concerning because our feedback to government certainly has been that we need to tackle this from a risk-based approach. We recognise that with some types of e-bikes, particularly the kit bikes, do pose a high risk, and we need to focus on where the risk is. The government in not just New South Wales but other states and territories of Australia have risk-based approaches that they use for other policy-made decisions, and they have an acceptable level of risk in many areas. However, the appetite for this type of risk was initially zero, and we don't think that that's fair because ultimately it's a blunt policy approach or a lazy policy approach, which will essentially reprimand all of us good e-bike riders with high quality, low risk, no fire hazard items, and essentially reprimand all of us for the poor quality of some bikes out there in the marketplace. So that's a real problem which we're slowly working through. And certainly all of the consistent issues are exactly the same in Victoria as they are in New South Wales. So hopefully we're going to see some sensible policy made, which ultimately addresses the risk out there and still allows all of those good quality e-bikes out there to operate safely and effectively.
And I think we're all heading for that direction. So just quickly, are you working towards a solution there on the sensible outcome? Do you have any in mind or not quite yet? Because I know we're working closely.
We have certainly a number of sort of the medium and longer term. All of those points I won't restate all of them from Peter Bourke. They're all very, very sensible approaches. I noticed the Have Your Say is still open in New South Wales for another 2 days. It closes on Wednesday for anyone who wants to pop in a suggestion from Victoria. Then we welcome as many contributions as possible, and that's very important. But we are also looking at short-term exemptions as well. So the things that government can do today or tomorrow, which are very quick and easy, which mitigate that risk, but still allow easy, accessible access by safe, legal, high-quality e-bikes. And some of those things include things such as, we want to see some exemptions for less abled and disabled people because there's a significant impact for them. We also want to see some exemptions made around some of those existing standards. And we also look one of the options certainly being considered in New South Wales and could be an option elsewhere is first and last carriage options as well. So allowing that e-bike access on a train on the first carriage or the last carriage, which mitigates that risk again.
No.
All right, thanks for your contribution up there, Peter. Now, I'm just going to throw back to the in-house audience to hear a bit more on that. We'll wrap up a little bit later with what we're looking at in Victoria in terms of the advocacy there. But we've got Dr. Elliot Fishman in the audience, the Director for the Institute of Sensible Transport. Elliot, welcome. I just wanted to ask you from your perspective, what impact would a ban on public transport have on the actual transport system, and what are you seeing there? as the issues?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, and we actually don't know the answer to that yet because one of the basics of risk management is that you work out the likelihood of something happening and the consequences of something happening. Now, the consequence of something like a fire in a train or a tunnel, the consequences are high, but we don't know what the likelihood is because we haven't measured how many e-bikes are being carried on our public transport system. And until you know that, so you never ban a drug just because of one incidence of an adverse effect, unless you knew how many people were taking that drug to work out what the likelihood of that thing is. So the concern that I've got is that we're shooting from the hip, one isolated incident on a bike that perhaps wasn't compliant, and then everybody is basically negatively on that. One of the consequences that Faith Hunter mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago is that you could have people that say live in a suburb like Broadmeadows, somewhere pretty far out, a little bit too far to ride easily into the city. Let's say you're a food delivery worker. And now that if there was a ban on the carriage of e-bikes on public transport, that person may be left with no other choice other than to ride what is a pretty sketchy on-road route from Broadmeadows into the city. And that presents a road safety risk to them that is unavoidable now if the ban was to take place. And so you need to measure the risks of making one policy decision versus the risks of not taking that decision to work out what is the net impact and how much risk are we imposing on other people that don't have any other choice. But on first principles, the first thing that needs to be done before you go to a ban is to work out, well, how often is this happening? And how many people are actually taking e-bikes on public transport at the moment? Because I don't think anyone really knows the answer to that because that data hasn't been collected.
No.
And I think that that's an extremely valuable insight as well. And I mean, I guess I don't want to just throw a question to Glenn out of the blue, but I mean, that could potentially be a concern that this will force people who are taking transport on roads that might not otherwise be super safe.
Oh, it's just a little bit perverse outcomes, and I think you're exactly right that could be. And I don't know how many food delivery riders ride their bikes into the city rather than leave them here and start work. But if the removal of the ride from Belgrade and people can't catch the train back, or I get that. So it is exactly right. Like times consequences, that is the well understood formula around risk. So that's something that needs to be considered.
It's a little bit like start pickets, landscapes, your start pickets in the ground. Now, if you have a start picket on the side of a path that doesn't have a cap on it, it's just really sharp metal, and somebody falls and hits their head, that will do a lot of damage. Now, you could take the decision, all right, well, if that happens, we'll ban all start pickets, or you could just say, we're going to mandate putting a cap on the top of the start picket, which is what is actually the case. And therefore, you don't have to ban the start picket. There's a safe way of using it. I think and both Peters had mentioned it in this conversation this evening, that there is a safer alternative to what is currently happening, and that would be a much better outcome from a policy perspective, public policy perspective, than just a blanket ban, even on the ones that are fully compliant and have no risk of just spontaneously combusting batteries.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have Daryl in the audience, who's a member, who's written back to say that a ban would impact him. Daryl, can you tell us about how you use an e-bike?
Well, I'll try to following on the medical one, but I'm Daryl. I'm 70 years old and I've got Parkinson's. Anyone spot that? Medication's great. And the other thing with medication is adding the e-bike riding. Now, there's lots of papers out there that have been written that riding a bike, doesn't have to be an e-bike, has great benefits. It generates a shot of dopamine. It enhances the cognitive function, so planning more bike rides and stuff. So I'm a member of Manningham Bug, although I'm not representing them at this point, just to follow up from that. And through some notes, so that's the other thing with Parkinson's, your mind wanders and stuff, I'm going to make notes. So a couple of those, and what I find with the proposed, so in riding my e-bike, 5 years ago, I went and bought my first e-bike. I bought a Q wash system, and I put up over 11,000 kilometres on that. I've ridden all the bike trails in Victoria, which are longer than 10 kilometres, with commercial routes and other shuttle routes and stuff. And I've been using V-line trains to do this. And then I discovered that V-line coaches go further than the V-line trains, opening up more possibilities for me to ride more bike trails, get more attractions to exercise. And so the thing is too, with the exercise, it's in my right side. So if I start coming off medication, the right leg drags a bit. So if I'm running or walking, that's a problem. If I want a bike, I'm sorry, fella, you got to do it that I'm doing. And that's, basically comes down to with Parkinson's and bikes. But when I look at the proposed legislation, there's this obviously rushed through, and there's no actual categorisation of e-bikes. There's a full-blown e-bike, which I take as a train, but they don't consider, and I can take my, back up. So when I found that V-line coaches could take e-bikes, it had to be a folding e-bike. So I researched what I could and did the right thing. So I bought a folding e-bike with Bosch electrics. I Googled the world. There's two. One's available in Australia, one's not imported. So I got a turn and loving it. And with that system, when I've gone down and ridden the Great Southern Trail a couple of times in Gippsland, the only way to get there is to drive. With your bike under my back, I choose not to drive, or getting on a V-line coach. So I've done that, gone to the Southern Cross, taken the battery out, fold the bike up, put it in the bag, told the driver, that's what I've done, taken the battery inside the bus with me, and the bike was underneath. Now, sorry, it's a coach. But if we look at the proposed legislation, they're saying I can take my folding e-bike on a bus or a tram because you can stop easily and the driver can see anything. But no one's thought through this whole, it fails the pub test, is that I can take my folding e-bike into a V-line coach and done what I've done, take the battery out, put the bike underneath in the cargo area and take the battery onto the bus with with me. How's that different? It's a lack of detail thought through this as well. There's another one coming here.
So look, we really appreciate you coming along and can see, so this ban will have an impact on you.
Yeah. More challenging trying to figure. The biggest challenge so far was saw a Jetstar ad for $99 to go to Busselton direct. So to rent an e-bike in Margaret River, they call it Marked Up River, was over $100 a day. So no, we're taking our own e-bikes. So right, okay, we can put them on Jetstar, okay, sans battery, and end up finding a way to ship our batteries by road transport. So there is a way, and ship the batteries by road transport, it costs more than us.
Doesn't get to that. Thank you for coming on and sharing the story. So I want to flip across to the bike industry now. We've got Mark Edel online. He's the Advocacy and Engagement Manager for Trek, the largest retailer in Australia. So Mark, hopefully you're online there. What has the impact of the explosion of illegal imports on established bicycle brands? So what are you seeing there as a dealer or an
Thanks, Ali, and evening, everybody. I've split into two areas, sales and service. And on the sales side, the growth of illegal imports has effectively established two markets. There's the legal market and there's the non-compliant market. And to be frank, we don't see much impact from the sales because we're not selling what they're looking for. These people are tending to look for throttle control over, acceleration over 6 kilometers an hour, speeds well over 25. So we're not their market. On the service side, we're seeing a big impact. We've had to establish some distinct protocols in all of our stores, and I understand this is replicated in a lot of other stores as well outside our brand, where we effectively put buckets. So we've got established brands, the well-known, well-regarded, that are built to international standards. We will service those except for battery and electrical components. So we'll do everything else. And then you have the less established and the non-compliant brands, and we simply won't touch them. we will not even, our protocol is that we will not even let them be stored on premises overnight, because we do not know the quality of them, and therefore there is a distinct risk against them. So sales, not so much, although we do get people coming in going, hey, can you tell me, what do you think about this bike? And they point to something that they then get told is actually illegal. But on the service side, distinct protocols are all in place.
Okay, thank you so much for those insights. And we've also got Emmy and Jürgen from Dutch Cargo here, a retailer of e-bikes, and we'd just love to hear from you as well. I mean, you're selling e-bikes every single day, so we just really love to hear from you does this uncertainty, how does it impact your customers, and what do you see?
Yeah, we've been doing this for 15 years and we only sell the legal bikes, so high quality. So people come to us. One of the things is they come to us because they know they're getting a legal bike and they come for advice. But the people who come to us are not bike riders in the sense of the Australian way people think about bike rides. People come to us who want to transport their kids, their dog, themselves, commuting. So it's very a different kind of group than maybe the bicycle user groups. And those people often use public transport. So they will ride their kids to kindergarten and then ride to the city, but that might be too far, so they'll use the train. And so for them, it will be a big impact. And these people will all go back to a car. They will, so that will flood back into in traffic, which is going to be a big problem in the CBD. Plus, we sell a lot of e-bikes to women my age and up, who want to get back into riding, or are a bit like, oh, I can't do this anymore on a normal bike, but I want an e-bike. And women tend to use the bike and public transport in combination to feel safe. So if you're walking to a train station, that's less safe than when you're riding to a train station. So these people will not ride because they need that bit of train with the bike combination and not with the walking combination. I think that's something that people haven't thought about. It's about feeling safe, and that's what we're seeing in our markets.
And you know, Emmy is a big advocate in this space, and Glenn earlier felt a bit kind of embarrassed to say, oh, and we think, you know, it's getting women riding, but it's true.
Absolutely. More than 50% of our people are women. What I've done a lot of sales because women come in with a toddler here and a crying baby there. They will not go to a normal bike shop. They will come to us because we understand. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to know what a sprocket is. You can come to us and we help you to find the right bike that suits what you need. And that's e-bikes. We sell 99% e-bike for transport, for a reason to get around from A to B.
It's absolutely amazing. So thank you, Mark, and thank you, Emmy, and thank you for being reputable dealers too, in an environment where it must be tempting, right? I mean, you know, kids are coming in and they're wanting these bikes with a throttle. And on that subject, we've got Gemma Casanova from Zumo. Now, Gemma provides e-bikes for gig workers. Just listen to the audience side. So there's a good news story here, but please welcome. So I'm going to quote Glenn Weir here. No one wants a cold pizza. So Gemma, allegedly gig workers are riding illegal e-bikes. How are they sourcing them, and how do we get them on legal e-bikes?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I know, you know, e-bikes, skate workers, and so on are very popular within even the bike community. But first of all, I work for Zumo, which is a totally compliant and reliable bike. So I heard very good things about Garry. I invite everyone to also try a Zumo bike, which is very comfortable. And I read it personally. I'm a bit biased. So anyways, it is a big topic, and a lot of gig workers need an e-bike, and we're always thinking on sustainability when we think of e-bikes and how it really benefits cities and commuters, and as you were saying, women, but also it has such a fantastic effect on the social impact of, for example, gig workers, who most of them are students or having like their second job to make ends meet. So it also has a really social economic benefit, you know, the improvement of e-bikes in our cities. So gig workers really need they really benefit from e-bikes. So I feel if we really push like illegal bikes out of, you know, the streets and so on, it will actually have a really good benefit. And I'm so glad then about what the Victoria Police is doing on actually enforcing the law. I feel you when you say we always, we feel the pain because we've been being legal and sourcing legal bikes for gig workers. And we feel so frustrated when we see, like really high speed e-bikes on the road. And at Sumo, we spend so much of our time thinking on safe, like hardware and how to make our bikes really safe. So I think one of the best options, because there are legal options of e-bikes, we all know. So I think enforcement from the law and the police is a fantastic way of making this push. And also, in all honesty, for us, the bike community, like special retailers, having safe bikes and good quality bikes, it's one of a very good, solution for this potential damage.
Wonderful. Thank you for speaking. And I think we can all echo the sentiment that we would like more compliant e-bikes for delivery riders.
Yeah.
And my question really is how are they riding these bikes? They all seem to be the same.
I know.
Who's supplying the bikes to the rider?
So basically, for context, by my accent, I used to work for Zumo back in Spain. Now I work for Zumo here in Australia. And every time I travel to Australia, so I'm really like, okay, I'm declaring everything. I don't have jamon, like I'm super secure in everything. And I'm coming, from Spain. And then I realized I started working, and I realized that a lot of people were sourcing their e-bikes from garages, like just people importing, like buying in Alibaba or Temu, or these sort of like Chinese companies, importing like 50, 100 bikes and just like renting them out in their garage. And I was quite shocked because I didn't understand how this was possible. So because, regulation is very strict in Europe, so I expect, Australia to be very, very strict. And then everyone's saying, no, because they importing is different here than in Europe. And I was quite shocked. So basically, you can just go on Marketplace and search for like rental bikes, and then they could just like rent it from someone in their garage, which is quite shocking.
Lindy, you're nodding your head again. And I know you've got to all of the CEOs out there.
Yeah.
How can we support, changing the system? Because clearly it's not the delivery riders. They're kind of just taking what equipment they're provided for their workplace.
Yeah.
How can we action this?
So I think, that's really good. It is market-driven forces that will drive those out. But again, it's a supply and demand and a profit thing. I suspect people, if that is available for people to rent, is it illegal to rent out an illegal bike?
Yeah.
So it's a problem. And as I said before, the gig economy rights we're seeing that we're enforcing against, we're generally enforcing against their behaviour.
Yeah.
Not against the, we do check the bike, and there are some that are non-compliant. But generally we are in, it is the footpath, the red light, the
Okay.
But yeah, it's a real problem, and I think it's a self-answering question, really.
Yeah.
And I know Mr. Williams has written to Commonwealth, as has Minister in New South Wales, which is great. And I'm actually another role I have is for a couple of chair of the Australasian Road Policing Network, which is all the assistant commissioners from Australia and New Zealand. And I'm also the deputy chair of the National Drug Driving Working. So I'm well connected with the Commonwealth, and they are asking me questions about how we can almost get a working group at the national level around this issue. So I think there's certainly will to do good here from everyone, Commonwealth and state governments. But we've just got to keep chipping away.
Thank you.
But as I said, thank you so much for, the enforcement that has been going on recent weeks and months. I know it's not, it's still
We
easy.
don't enforce our way out of this. This is not something we can enforce our way out of, because it's in.
Okay. Now it is question time. Now, we had around 500 questions submitted for tonight. So we're not going to be able to take in-person questions. But what we've had is Bram Alexander, who has absolutely analysed all of those questions. Sections. We'll also summarise them all on the website because we really appreciate everyone and the amazing response to it. So please know that we will share them with the Minister's office as well. We'll categorise them. But Bram's done a great job on trying to get some key questions in the time we've got. So I'm handing it over to Bram.
Rather than Q&A, I'm going to go through fast fingers like on the Friday review and come up with the comments and the segments that have really resonated very strongly with everybody, with 500 responses. Battery safety versus blanket bans. If the real risk comes from poor quality lithium-ion batteries, why not regulate imports and set strict standards instead of banning all e-bikes from trains? I think we're all on the same page on that one. Elliot, your point about data and drilling down, absolutely perfect. To Daryl and to Glenn, accessibility and equity. That was a big response from people. And some of the stories go like this. I'm 78 and ride regularly with a group. My German-made e-bike battery is highly unlikely to erupt in flames. But if I can't take it on a train, my riding will come to an end. As a 68-year-old with a disability, my e-bike and train combination gives me independence and freedom to see family, shop, to get to appointments. Without it, I'll lose my mobility. So these are very real issues. It's not trivial. Public transport integration, and again, I think we heard earlier about this, rather than banning e-bikes outright, why not consider practical solutions like designated carriages, off-peak restrictions, or requiring batteries to be removed before boarding? Ideas that people have come up with. On stormy days, or when my kids are sick, I rely on taking my Bosch-powered e-bike on the train to get home quickly. Without that option, I couldn't cycle or commute at all. So, you know, there are these themes coming through. Government accountability and enforcement. Glenn's been in the hot seat for this one. And I think we should give them a tick for doing the right thing. I bought my e-bike from 99 Bikes for $3,500, serviced it every year and followed all the rules. Why am I being punished while unsafe imports are ignored? And just a personal one from me, in our small group, one of the riders was on an e-bike, mainly because she was receiving treatment for what turned out to be terminal cancer. That gave the e-bike gave her the opportunity to ride with her buddies at times that were really important to her. We'd ride to, say, Altona. She and a couple of others would get the train back and we'd ride back, and she had her housing. So, you know, a lot more to come, a lot more to do, but I think tonight's given some really good pointers to where we need to go. It's over to you.
Can I say something? My name's Roger Taylor, by the way. I'm Chief Transport for Melbourne. For me, this is personal because about 30 years ago, I wrote the report which recommended a change in policy. Instead of bikes having restricted access on the trains, I said we should have universal access anytime. And all of a sudden, from a service which was non-existent to something which was 100%. And I have been watching and monitoring for 30 years how people have been using the service. And I absolutely groan every time there's a bus replacement service because it's killed the service. But they do it a lot. That's another issue. But in watching it, I have been absolutely amazed how the system is self-regulating. People, and I'm one of them because I use it a lot now. I play tennis 5 times a week and 3 times a competition, and every single tennis club that I have to play away from home, and including home, I use the train in combination. So if it's down near Noble Park, I can get there from Camberwell and so on. And I do this 3 times, 4 or 5 times a week, times 2, because there's both journeys. But what I have noticed, and this is where I'd like to correct one of the proposals is that it is self-regulating in that when I hop on a bike, and I notice other people do exactly the same, they don't go for the end carriages, they look for wherever there is space. It's self-regulating. And you cannot be assured that the end carriages will be not chock-a-block. You look for wherever there are occupied. So the recommendation that was proposed in New South Wales, that we have one end of the carriage, please don't go for that. It is absolutely a shock. Because I think what you need to do
Yeah, but we are working with a working group of bicycle user groups, and there's many in the room, and we're coming up with a series of options there to talk through public transport. So you're coming along to the next meeting. Volunteer. Thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Garry for some closing remarks. Thanks, Garry.
This has been a great exchange of ideas tonight. I can see there's a lot of uncertainty and people are rightly concerned about their future transport options. But I'm optimistic that we can fix these problems. Sometimes a crisis can bring focus to problems and get the attention of those in power. There's a lot at stake and I sense a commitment to change. For the first time, we have commitment from federal and state governments to work together on developing a new regulatory environment that is harmonised across federal and state governments. The WA Transport Minister and Deputy Premier, Rita Safioti, has agreed to coordinate that response for federal and state governments. This should mean that the federal and state regulations would all be established around a single standard that would control all importation, sale and resale and flow across to law enforcement. The bicycle organisations around Australia are on board and will get behind the push for reform. Bicycle New South Wales and Bicyclenetwork are very active currently because of the proposed bans in our states. And the industry, the brands, the distributors and the retailers through Bike Industries Australia, who have also had an enormous amount at stake, are working with us on joint initiatives so that the consumer and the industry can work together to develop solutions that work for all of us.
Great, thank you. And thanks to everybody for their participation tonight. Thank you, Bram, for coming in such a significant time in your organisation. Thank you. Thank you to everybody who spoke. Just know, there are positive steps happening. We're here to advocate for them, particularly the imports, getting the retail and the states aligned. And most importantly, we're here to fight so that there's no ban imposed for what are compliant e-bikes in the meantime while we wait 2 to 3 years for that legislation to come through, because that is the time that it will take. It started, but it will take that length, the period, to potentially put those bans in place. So we appreciate everybody here. We appreciate our connections with the Buds, all of the national organisations. It's really wonderful to be working together. And most importantly, thanks for being members. I mean, you are the reason the night's here. You fund a night like this. So thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. And we're here to, fight in the corner. So thank you very much and have a good night. Once everyone jumps online, we can announce that there's strength and levels. Everyone's welcome.